Okay. So, here's what I want to talk about. We think about Eretz Yisrael / Geula. So we can look at it, we can think about it from two completely different approaches, different angles. There's something that we call hashgacha, which we can define as how HaKadosh Baruch Hu leads his world to wherever he's leading it. Some sort of divine plan that's playing itself out some way or another, of which we are, in this the way I'm phrasing it, observers, passive observers at best, who maybe sometimes see the patterns or see how hashgacha is playing itself out, where it's going. That's one model of, let's say, geula, meaning something's happening in the future. You believe that? 12th Iker, here's a Mashiach. Okay, so what is going to happen? Is it something that we're going to see Hashem's plan? We're going to perhaps understand Hashem's plan maybe as it plays out, and we'll see the development of it. Or, other model is, there are things in the world that we do. Now, what do I mean to say what do we do as opposed to what Hashem does? I mean to say there are things that we understand what we're doing, and we can predict, here's what we're doing and why. We're going to make the world a better place. Everything we do is to make the world a better place. You want to build a house. You need a house. You want to write a book because the world will be a better place. Whatever you do is because you have a cheshbon. So that's what I'm calling things that we do. And then there are things that Hashem does, which I mean to say, things that we don't understand, but we can understand after the fact and say, oh, look, something interesting is happening. But what's interesting about what's happening was not inputted by our brains, because we didn't think about it in advance, but we can perceive it and detect it. So these are, you can look at everything that happens in the world, and the good things that happen in the world, and what I'm talking about today specifically is geula / Eretz Yisrael. So the good things that happen in the world, the good things that happen, here's the key thing we're talking about, the good things that happen in this world, there are two ways to look at the good things that happen. Either they happen through hashgacha, tahainu, Hashem understands it, Hashem does it, we don't understand it. And there are good things that happen through human beings being B'Tselem through the fact that we understand things. We have theories and models, mental models, ways of thinking about things that then we act upon and create good. So we can apply that, we can think about that. Now, if we're talking about geula and Eretz Yisrael, which of those two approaches are we supposed to, is going to happen, let's say?
Is there a difference between the criteria for, let's say, foresight hashgacha and hindsight hashgacha, right? Or, let's say, recognition of, like, pattern of providence. There's certain things that we can understand in foresight, we would imagine are providential. If the can starts to float, and that's a foresight criteria that I'm setting. In hindsight,
if you predict it, if you predict that the plan's about to float, what do you mean?
Meaning, I would consider it providential, let's say, or it's hard to have a foresight. Providence is always a trickier criteria to satisfy than hindsight, right?
Okay, so I think what you're saying is right. So are you asking like this? Here we're talking about two different things that we understand and things that we don't understand but happen anyways, right? So the second category, things that happen even though we don't understand them, can we only understand them after they happen, or can we only predict them after they happen? Whatever.
Somewhat, meaning if I roll a dice and there's 100 sides on it.
Yeah.
In hindsight, after the dice is rolled and it rolled on 57, I can say, oh my gosh, it rolled on 57. It has to be hashgacha.
Yeah.
That's not as impressive because it's going to roll on some number.
Yeah.
Versus in foresight, if I say it's going to roll on 57 or 57 will be a providential outcome.
Yeah, we're not trying to impress anyone. The thing is like this. The thing is we have this thing called Judaism, whatever, and it makes various predictions. Such as, that's why I'm saying Mashiach, right? Or geula.
So it's 57 before the die is rolled.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is a prediction. I'm working with that prediction. Now, to the extent that that prediction is going to come true, is that going to come true through just being a prediction without us implementing something? Or is the prediction that human beings are going to implement something? And you could trace this question, talking about Eretz Yisrael, and I talk about this in my sefer. I'm saying, Lagabi, the very question, should we move to Eretz Yisrael? You can map out those who take a passive approach to Mashiach in general, and those who take an active approach to Geula. and maybe it has to do with this question. But I want to talk about it in a general way. In a general way, if we spoke about last year, okay, Eretz Yisrael is central to the Torah, very nice, no question about it. And what I mentioned last year, one important thing was that if you see that it's central to the Torah, but it still is not interesting to you, then you're stuck. There's nothing to do about that. It just means that you don't get the Torah. The Torah doesn't speak to you. That's what we spoke about last time. So fine. So Eretz Yisrael has to speak to you. There has to be something about Eretz Yisrael that's interesting to you if you're going to be a full Jew, if you're going to understand the Torah. But the question is what's interesting about Eretz Yisrael / Google, which to me is identical, is what's interesting that there's something we can do about it that makes sense, okay? And then we should explain what it is and how it is, and then go ahead and do it. Push it, write a paper, explain it to what everyone can understand without anything supernatural, meaning to say without anything predictable, without anything just that's the way it is, but really explaining how it's going to happen. Or should we fall back and say, look, there's a pattern called Jewish history, there's a pattern of the world called the Jewish people, which broadly speaking we call that hashkacha, and we should tap into that, by going to Eretz Yisrael, and if we go to Eretz Yisrael, things will be good, not because we could explain how, but because that's what it says in the holy books. There's some sort of hashkacha, prediction, providence, that Eretz Yisrael is central to.
Is it obvious that these are two separate options, or maybe they're really one?
Right, so maybe these are really one. So that's right, maybe it's really one. Is there really a thing? Is there really such a thing as patterns in reality? Again, that's what I'm calling hashkacha. That happen without human thought. Is that your question essentially?
No, my point is maybe the way these predictions come true is by the same source telling you do this, and somehow the things you do cause those outcomes.
Right.
For example, historically, you would say that maybe the Jews survived because we kept the Torah. Like that's why that is the reason.
Right.
It's not like us external from it and we were saved. Hashem reset.
Right.
We did the Torah and that's
right. So I think what he's saying is like this: the Torah says, "Keep the Torah and you'll survive." And we kept the Torah and we survived because we believed the Torah that said if we keep it, we'll survive. And Taka, because we believed it, of course we survived, because it became a natural thing that will survive.
Yeah, that is what the prediction is predicated on.
Right. So here I'm gonna present it to you. Good. So I'm gonna present it.
We're getting to the free will topic.
No, not at all. Not at all. He's telling you these are the things that work in this world. So if you do them, you'll have good outcomes.
No, they're saying like Google will happen no matter how much.
Well, that's a question.
No matter nothing I do.
Well, that's actually a big question. We must imagine whether there's going to be a gulu if we don't do tshuva. It's a mamish. It's such an important question. It might be this question in some way, might not be. In a way, that's like the most important question of Judaism, because the question is Hashem just doing something with us, or are we doing something with Hashem? That's the mamish thing we must try this in the long run. And the long run is everything. We'll talk about that tonight. Gula is not just, we sort of underestimate Gula. We think of Gula as just this amazing thing that we're hoping for, but it goes much deeper. We'll get to that soon. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of things to start to, but I want to talk about specifically, let's say, Lagabi the Shai of Eretz Yisrael. So here will be the two approaches, okay? Let's take approach number one. Everything that happens in this world, everything good that happens in this world happens through human beings that understand it. That's my approach, and let's see how that applies to it. So in that approach, if we apply that to Eretz Yisrael, that means that return to Eretz Yisrael Gula is going to happen through us understanding how it's so important, why it's so important, and being interested in putting it into effect, right? So
the understanding is important because it's the only way to go.
Maybe that's how things happen.
Because we could base our actions are based on understanding?
Yeah. Because maybe the only way things happen in this world, which is ultimately under the control of human beings, is by human beings understanding what they're doing. In other words, what I'm asking is, let's say, like sort of what I was saying, like, is there a prediction of Geula? Is the prediction of Geula anything more than a prediction that human beings will understand Geula and do something about it? And if it's only that, and this is a couple of questions to Tzolomers here, and if it's only that, does that mean that we shouldn't do anything about it unless we could explain it? Not necessarily tell what is that, but those are the two steps. Imtim Tzolomers, everything good that happens in this world is through human beings who are Tzelem Elokim and control the world. Does that mean then, let's follow then, that we should make it our business to understand Eretz Yisrael? Which is sort of what my hanacha last week. My hanacha last time was, it has to make sense. But I want to explore that, because then the other alternative is to say, no, maybe it doesn't have to make sense. Maybe we just have to see a pattern. We'll get to that soon. Maybe we just have to look at the pattern and say, going to Eretz Yisrael is part of the process, of the historical process. And historical processes are larger than maybe one mind can even understand, and maybe it's worth living up to that for some other reason, even if we can't explain it. That's the second side. First side is that clear? Clear roughly the two tzadim, because like I said, you could argue on points and you could pull and push. But the two extremes are anything that's valuable to the Torah. The most valuable thing to the Torah, we're talking about, depends on human beings' understanding, because that's how Hashem's plans are realized. They're realized through humans. And therefore they're realized through humans understanding them and living up to them based on their understanding. But maybe we just have to be part of a pattern, and maybe if we recognize a pattern, we should perhaps participate in it more than if we didn't recognize it. And the application would be, which we'll get to a little bit later, but I want to talk about the first time first. The application would be, there's a pattern called Golos and Gula. There's a pattern called being in Eretz Yisrael, and some certain hashkacha that's attendant to that, let's say, and therefore maybe it makes sense to participate in that without being so smart. Okay, but now I want to talk to the side that we are very smart and we understand how Eretz Yisrael is the center of everything. It's the most important center of the whole Torah, that is. It's everything. Eretz Yisrael is everything. Now, this is something I said so many times. Really, for sure, this hurts me. You heard this, I spoke about this. You know this already. It's impossible to exaggerate, to overstate how central Eretz Yisrael is to the Torah. The fact that Hashem's message to Avram, it's not a geschmack thing to say. It's not fun to say this. We're so not used to this. We're living in chutzah, so you don't want to say this. But it's not. I have the great mile, which is that I'm able to say things that are uncomfortable for me. I don't care, but somehow I'm able to live like that. But then I end up caring. Eventually, I start caring. It catches up to me. But I'm able to first go into it on the intellectual level and worry about the ramifications later. Fact is that Vayom Hashem Avram Lech Lecha, all HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted, all Hashem ever wanted was that Avram should go to Eretz Yisrael. And Idach Pirusha. Kol Torah Kula follows from there. Chazal says Kula Eretz Yisrael and Kol Torah Kula. There's a real thing to that. The whole Torah is a pirush and a mahalach for Avram to live up to the call to Hashem of Lech Lecha Eretz Yisrael. Why is that? Why is it? So this is something I explained in my sefer, which is that the call to Avram to go to the land that I will show you, that Hashem says I'm going to show you a land, is means the following. And I recommend that you look at the sefer. You can share them online, different places if you want to hear more about this. Hashem is inviting Avram to see the world as Hashem does. Lech Lecha Eretz Yisrael means I, Hashem, want to show you something. What does that mean? Think about that. It means Hashem is saying like this. It's something that I see. I, Hashem, see something. Let's imagine Hashem as a human being, because that's what the Psukim do. That's what Psukim teach us to do. Think of Hashem as this super being that sees everything. And he sees everything to a very specific perspective. The perspective that comes from someone who doesn't care, doesn't not selfish, has everything he needs, knows everything, thinks about the whole history, the whole past, present, and future all at the same time, and sees the whole universe and so on and so on.
Sometimes the Torah talks about Hashem as if he didn't know anything.
Yeah, okay, fine. That's interesting. Haster Pani, right. That's interesting to think about. Okay, but let's say the verse. So Areka means like this. Hashem says, look, I look at the earth, and I see it the way Hashem does. I want to invite you, Avram, to participate in that kind of viewing, in that kind of vision. That's the core of the call to humanity, of the divine, is not serve me. It's you can also approach the world and view it as Hashem does. Okay. We'll get to what does that have to do with this specific piece of land. We're not going to talk about that tonight. Obviously, that's the first question. What does that have to do with that? It's cannot. But the call of Hashem to humans is, you can learn to see the world as Hashem does. Okay, so just imagine for a moment if humanity would actually live up to this idea of really taking a God's eye view of the universe. Every human being, instead of looking out and seeing what he cares about, what he's concerned with, would start seeing the world as Hashem sees it, from the perspective of Hashem. You understand now why Chazal could say these superlative things about Eretz Yisrael, symbolic things about it. If you live in Eretz Yisrael, you don't have favorites. Because all problems, by definition, all problems, what does it mean something's a problem? It means something is inconsistent. There's some action that's inconsistent with the universe. Why do we do things that are inconsistent with reality? Why do we do destructive things? Why do we do things that are destructive? Because we think they're constructive. Because we don't understand what we're looking at. Because we don't look at things properly. Let's say a simple example is you only look at what affects you. You don't think about other people. Okay, it's the most basic problem that people have is that they're selfish. What does it mean to be selfish? Oh, you're bad, you're selfish. It means you have a bad perspective. You're just stupid. You don't really. You're just seeing what's right here in front of you, instead of taking a bigger view. So Hashem is inviting everyone, telling, look, it's possible for you to be a god, basically. Just tell them a kid, like operation. It's possible for humans to see the world as I do. Now, Ilach Pirusha, Kol Torah Kula follows from this. Now, something very important to understand is that humanity never lived up to this. We never lived up to this. Judaism was never fulfilled. That's the key idea over here. To think about this. And that's what I was saying before. Geula is not just this amazing thing, which is, Nishna, we're Yidden, and we have Shavuos coming, and then Simple Torah, and we're so happy to be Yidden and to Hashem, but also we're going to have Geula. Really, the concept of Geula means that Judaism is right now is just a vision. It's just a chaloim. It's just a vision. The vision is that humans should learn to see as Hashem does. And how do I know this never happened? I'll prove to you it never happened. You think, what do you mean Geula never happened? We once in Eretz Yisrael, we were there for 1,000 years, whatever, 1,000 years of Nevuah. But if they're going into the Torah now, like I said, this is all sefer, sure, everyone else listen. I want to focus on where I'm up to, not, as I said before, but just to give you a sense. The Gemara says, everyone knows, that the Bayis Rishon was destroyed for the 3 cardinal sins. And the Gemara also says, which is really first in the Pasuk, like all Gemaras, that it was the Chet Meraglim which caused Galus. That the Gzeres Galus was Nigzar on Tisha B'Av. Even 40 years before they came to Israel and were doing it was already decreed that they're going to be Gaila. 850 years later. So which one is it? Is it the Abazogil Ashit's Damen, or is it the Chet Meraglim? The answer is the Chet Meraglim is the Shirish of all Averis. Chet Meraglim is the Shirish of all. Chet Meraglim is not. It's also, but it's not only that. Oh, here Hashem gave us this big gift, Eretz Yisrael, and you guys don't appreciate it. Okay, say that. Okay, so what's the big deal? That the problem with Chet Meraglim is that the call to Avram Avinu is Areka. So you have to learn how to see like Hashem. And learning how to see as Hashem does for some reason, which I'm not going to go into tonight because I don't want to, at some point, depends on this strip of land. Okay? Depends on going to a certain place on earth. And there you can learn how to see like Hashem does, and your descendants will too. And if they do that, everything's going to be fine. Everything depends on this. And if you don't do that, if you don't learn to see as Hashem does, so of course you could have a Zogid Hashem does it. It's just natural. Follows. Human beings will always mess up. I mean, kids, human beings have always messed up. Even when we had Nevuah, we had it, so we were still a bunch of chaitim, and there was terrible things, and that led to Galus. So human beings have flaws. Why do we have flaws? So what I'm saying is, you know why we have flaws? Because we can't see as Hashem does. If only we would be able to see as Hashem does, we would be perfect. Now, that's truism. That's not. I don't think anyone could dispute that. Of course, if we would learn how to see as Hashem does, we'd be perfect. The question becomes: Can we learn to see as Hashem does? Like you're begging the question. But I'm saying there's a root. There's one root, and the root is perspective. The root is knowledge, essentially, but not just dumb knowledge, any plain knowledge, but a kind of thinking, a method of approaching the world, of saying, I want to think as Hashem does, I want to see things as Hashem does.
So you're saying because the Meraglim, didn't see the right perspective, and then so even while the Beis Hamikdash was going on, it was destined to fail.
Yeah, because meaning even the 40 years later, when they did go to Eretz Yisrael, the sending of the Meraglim was a test whether Bnei Yisrael is up to this kind of idea of seeing as Hashem does.
Right.
And they failed. They weren't able to see as Hashem does. And if you can't, and it's like a double test. If you don't see things as Hashem does, you're going to see Eretz Yisrael and think, not so interesting. So the fact that they came back with a negative report indicated that they weren't ready to approach the world and see it as Hashem does, which is obviously a great challenge. Right? See it as Hashem does, But you could start doing it. It's a practice. It's something to think about. You can really practice doing this. Think about, okay, what does Hashem notice? Because we all notice things that we care about. What does Hashem notice when He's looking? Well, what does Hashem care about? So you have to really start understanding Hashem. That's why understanding Hashem is not just theoretical. It's actually very practical because it's the most important thing to determine how you should live, because it's the truth. Meaning, we all live in falsehood, basically. We all live in falsehood. Because we all just, however things occur to us, anything appear to us, that's how we live. But there's a possibility to live in truth. There's a possibility to transcend the narrow, coincidental, whatever happens to be our situation, and therefore we take that as important or real or the most real. If there's a possibility to transcend that, then there's a possibility for redemption in the truest sense. Redemption from the being limited by circumstance, body, etc., etc. So that's why I say it's very important to think. People think about Judaism as say that Judaism is Mardik, great, but then there's going to be something better. But really, it's not true. It's not true. Judaism is this vision called Lech Lecha Shareka, which was never fulfilled, and we're just beginning that. We're sort of just beginning. We're just getting started over here, and we're still trying to figure out whether we could do this. Stamzish, I think it's an important thing to think about. Sort of something about Yiddishkeit feels a little old, but I think it's actually not. I think it's actually very young, in the sense that we have a revolutionary vision that we're still trying to work on. It's old only in the sense that we've been working on it for thousands of years, but it's not like we've been doing Judaism as the essence of Judaism. We haven't. We've been trying, and it's very important. Torah mitzvah is all very important. I don't mean to say that what we've been doing is not. It's the most important thing because we're preserving the possibility and we're working towards this possibility of realizing our echo. You're going to ask me, you never heard of this till tonight. So first of all, I can't help you. Sorry, I can't help you. This is the mitzvah, this is the fact. And also, say that we forgot it, I don't know, whatever. It doesn't matter. But that's not a kasha, because the raya that we are working towards it is that we're here tonight talking about it. So it can't be a kasha. Last night you didn't hear about it. Okay, so we got to tonight. Hashem Shachion. Now we know. Now we know what we've been working towards. Well, the this is what it is. Mamish cannot be overstated. How this is the crux of Yiddishkeit. And the raya is like we forget about this. How crazy it is that what is Hashem calling Avram Avinu? What is Vayom Hashem Avram? Something I have to show you. Not serve me, not a salach l'fonai. Something I have to show you.
Maybe the 12th ikr is the answer. That we're this idea of waiting for it is because that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, so it's answer to which question?
No, it's just like you're saying, where's the come from this idea? Like, that's the main thing. Wait for it.
Right, but I know. Yeah, 100%. But
you don't wait for Tiyas Mason because you're not doing Tiyas Mason. You're doing
Very good. No, I think we can do Tiyas Mason. Gemara says even tzaddikim ha'chiyas Mason. Do that too.
It doesn't seem like something you're just like.
Yeah, the Rambam for sure.
Yeah,
the Rambam for sure. It's an ace. It's some something we do. But right.
That's not capacity.
Right. That's passive.
Yes. Also kind of doesn't like the idea of tzaddikim being L'chaim Mason.
It doesn't?
I mean, with Yichaskel, at least the Gemara is,
Right. I see the tzaddikim ha'chiyas Mason is where? Is it on Sanhedrin? Is it in Babasa, Sanhedrin? Anyone know?
What?
Asidim tzadikim hachiyas mesim.
Total guess. Probably should.
It's in kindness, no?
Yeah, I think it's in time. Okay.
No, but
Okay, it's like the Rambam.
yeah, the Gemara in Sanhedrin for some reason is very insistent that Yecheskel wasn't.
Right, so it's not in Sanhedrin. I think it's interesting. I think it's not in Sanhedrin. Like,
Not intentional.
I don't think
No,
so.
but
See.
in
Check.
Sanhedrin the Gemara doesn't like it.
Right. Okay. I hear.
We'll continue
So-
with the Abrahamic
Yeah.
mission.
Mm.
Was this this is a question that we just posed right now, just
Yeah.
relevant to Abraham?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. Okay, the first question, the core question.
It seems that it
So-
seems that it was just
yeah.
our go. This wasn't coming from an understanding. So
No, of course
why
it's
would
coming
you
from
continue?
understanding. No. Avram Avinu understood Areka. He understood what he's being called to do. He's being called to do Areka. He's being called to see as Hashem sees, which is why he goes to Canaan and there's a Rav and he goes to Mitzrayim and by Yiru Isasa he says he didn't know that he you know why he never looked at her till that. Why not? Because he finally learned how to do Riyah. That's what's going on over there. Because he learned how to do Riyah. But that's a different issue. But one second. But what he had, so Avram Avinu knew what he had to do. He had to do Areka. He had to do
So
Areka.
he approached this with the understanding. or
100%. Yeah, he
So
understood the process. Yeah.
it just got lost, and we have to recover that.
Yeah, and now we recovered
That's
it.
the question.
Yeah, wait, right. So now that we recovered it, Baruch Hashem, the question is like this. The question is, so if we want to continue Avram Avinu's mission, should we does it make sense for us to, that doesn't make sense. Is it ma'akiv for us to understand what Areka is about, and that's how we'll continue Avram Avinu's mission? Or Dilma, things have become so messy, it's not on the individual, it's a whole nation, and there's hashkacha, some new thing called hashkacha, let's say, new thing, in the sense that, I'm suggesting that there's a new thing. And the new thing is like this. Once Hashem made a deal with Avram Avinu, and he said, Ki yadativ man she'etzav es banav l'tesei achrav, Avram Avinu didn't do it, it's going to happen through his descendants. Well, once it's happening through his descendants, maybe no one has to be Avram Avinu. Not everyone has to understand it. Maybe no one has to understand it. Maybe now it's just about doing things, and that will activate something by itself. Right? It's a fair question?
I mean, do they have to know him in a collective sense?
Maybe.
Not an individual sense?
Maybe, but we do. But maybe we sort of do, because I wrote my sefer, so we already have a collective sense. It's whatever. That's exactly what I'm asking. I'm asking, and this is, I have a very lemaisa nafkamina. Nafkamina lemaisa is, like I said on last year, we're trying to figure out what's interesting about Eretz Yisrael. So I'm trying to figure out, is it interesting only because I'll tell you what I reckon, and I'll tell you why we can do it there and how it's going to work? Or is it interesting because, look, there's a pattern called Jewish history, and it depends on Eretz Yisrael. And if we go to Eretz Yisrael, something special is going to happen. I'll tell you what. See, that's my real lemaisa dikashat. Give me the lemaisa dikashat. Avram Avinu certainly
It's
understood
only an
it.
interesting question if the first one's true, right? The second
But
one's
the
true.
first
we'll find
one,
out
what?
Over there.
One thing, it's only interesting if
If the first one is true.
first one, as in Areka.
Yeah, meaning if
Yeah.
we're supposed to realize that vision. If we're not, then we can just wait and see. Or even
What do you mean if we're
don't
not
wait
supposed to
and
realize?
see.
What's your thought that we're not supposed to realize?
Meaning if this is a passive thing.
What?
Right.
Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gula in general, if that's a passive thing, it's just history running its course,
Right.
then we don't even need to know that it's happening.
Well, maybe we do. I'll tell you why. Because
Why?
maybe we want to jump ahead and get there. See, if you could read history, it doesn't mean just because you could read history, it doesn't mean you should be passive. You're saying, well, if I could read history is something external
So
to myself.
Now these two
I don't
questions
agree
are
with
almost
you.
the same. meaning
No, because reading history allows me to say
the
I don't
first
have to
option-
explain.
The first option allows you to go in accord with it, and the next option just allows you to go against it.
No, the first option is how history happens, is through thought and therefore better think. Second option is maybe history has a pattern that happens by itself, which is worth jumping into and becoming a part of, whether you understand it or not.
Meaning
In other words,
that-
is the belief in hashgacha by definition pater us from thinking? That's my question. You see, I'm asking a religious question or whatever, not a scientific question. Saying, but
Meaning, do we need to arrange the? Maybe we need to build the machine but not know how it works. Is that the the question?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because Hashem knows how it works. Haraya, against Jewish history, let's say Tanakh, whatever your raya is. But I'm saying there's a hashgacha in history. There's a pattern in history. So apparently Hashem knows what He's doing. So all we have to do is, as you call the building
That
machine.
pattern in history we can call it hashgacha in different senses, right? I don't know if we're jumping ahead here, but we
Okay.
can call it hashgacha in the sense that things operate according to a certain scheme or nature,
Good.
right?
Want me to say it?
You know,
Yeah.
or
Okay.
we can make it much more contingent on particulars, right? To return to, I guess, the core topic.
Particulars
Which is
meaning
that,
what?
You know, things that I guess wouldn't follow a universal scheme, but would follow a more particular one. If you're here and this is happening,
Right.
you face a Mizrach,
Right.
you know,
Right. So then we should face
you
Mizrach.
know.
Right. Exactly. That's my question.
Or it can be a universal thing where it's, you know, trees always grow
Right.
and then they stop growing.
No,
That's
just one second.
nature
So,
having that's a hashkacha, right? In some sense.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm talking about, let's say, should we go to Eretz Yisrael? So does that mean we're talking about the particular hashkacha? Yeah,
That's my question. Is it are we speaking about it in a particular sense, meaning that there's an ordinary course that things follow, and this runs contrary
Okay,
to
so
that
good,
course?
good. So let me back up a step. Let me back up a step and tell you what my hanachas are. My hanachas are that we're learning Torah here, meaning learning Torah. Like I am continuing. I'm not talking about universalism and particularism today, at least. I'm continuing from last year, and this is the way I started. Last year, we were aiming on the fact that it's not enough to see that Torah is central to Eretz Yisrael and then do something about it, because it's supposed to talk to you. And if it doesn't talk to you, then doing something about it is not going to help you. Like the way we phrased it then, back of Edmund, because you say if you face that soul of tefillah and you don't go move there as soon as you can, then you're a hypocrite. But if you go move there as soon as you can, it doesn't help. Because you're only moving there because you don't want to be a hypocrite. So you never really faced Yerushalayim and tefillah either. You never really meant it. It never meant anything to you. In other words, you never felt that you want to go there as soon as you can. So therefore, what's the point of going there? Yaakov Mendel, which is following Yehuda Levi, he's just proving to you that you know what it means to face Yerushalayim and tefillah. It means that 3 times a day you're announcing, I wish I could be there. But if you don't wish you could be there, then it doesn't help to go there either. So why don't you figure out what I wish to be there? So in other words, what we're doing now is tonight we're learning Torah. And I want to understand, what does the Torah mean when the Torah teaches me as a Jew that I'm supposed to wish to be there? Does the Torah mean to say, I know why I want to be there, I know what it's about, and I know how I can do it, and here's how? Okay, is that what the Torah means? And therefore, before you knew that Areka is everything, you should have learned more Torah, right? You should have learned my Torah because you're a hypocrite, and now after you learn my Torah, you're not a hypocrite because you know Areka, and you know why it depends on you, and you know why you're going to move to Eretz Yisrael, Dafka Eretz Yisrael, and I mean all the details of how Areka is going to work in Eretz Yisrael, Dafka. We'll get to that a little bit. Or the Torah is supposed to speak to, because the Torah paints a picture of history, of Hashkacha, history, same thing, I'm calling the same thing. And according to that picture, if we're in Eretz Yisrael, that's the next step, and awesome things are going to happen. And that's how the Torah wants to talk to me. So I'm asking a Torah question. What is it that the Torah wants me to hear? Does the Torah want me to understand the potential in Eretz Yisrael? And I'm supposed to ask sort of like time of the grow, like, well, why is it so important to Hashem? And here's why, and here's what you could do about it, here's how you could fit in, here's how you could contribute. Or is the Torah saying, look, there's a picture of a pattern of events of the Jewish nation, and a land, and a culture, and everything, and so on and so forth, and just plug into that.
So go to Eretz Yisrael even if it doesn't speak to you.
Correct. But what will speak to you is not speak to you in the sense of last week. Maybe even if you can't explain it,
right. Maybe
it's supposed to draw you as, I don't know, I can't understand this, but there's something awesome. And we'll talk about that soon. Why would I go there for Hashkacha? Let's say this Hashkacha says, let's say there's more Hashkacha in Eretz Yisrael and there's Gula Eretz Yisrael. So why does that mean I should go there? We'll get to that soon. Why would that draw me? I'm not saying it's not supposed to speak to me, but I'm not supposed to necessarily understand it and say, look, you know why the Jews should move to Israel? I'll tell you why. Because, here's my first side. Because the most ambitious project for humanity is for humanity to see things as God does, and I believe that personally, 100%. Check. B, that there was once upon a time a person named Abraham who initiated this project, and C, we are his descendants, and D, he did it in this particular piece of land, and that became the place where people are going to do this.
You want it on contingency, basically.
What?
You want it on contingency.
Yeah.
Like because as a means to an end that I understand.
Exactly.
Even if I don't understand.
Exactly.
The cause and effect of that.
Exactly. So I tell you, just since we're on that topic, let me just explain it. There is what to be said about this. Here's how I can explain it to you. Here's how we can explain it. Like I just said, this is the most interesting and exciting revolutionary project of humans ever. And this is redemptive in the sense that as soon as humans can start becoming like seeing things like Hashem, then we solve humanity's problems. And again, like I said before, you could push back and say, isn't that just a tautology? Like, what do you say? Say this. We have to do the work. How do you learn to see like Hashem? First of all, how does Hashem see? What is Hashem? Fine. These become important questions, and we can't do anything tonight. But let's say humans can learn to see as Hashem, And once upon a time, a person had this vision of, you know what, Taka, maybe I can go see like Hashem, and maybe I could found a society that's based on that and develop a country that's what it's all about. Okay, and that person went off and he said, we have to find the right place for that, and this became the right place for that because of whatever reason. And next step, maybe we could do this in Lakewood. Maybe we could start doing Iraq in Lakewood, seeing as Hashem does in Lakewood. Maybe. But I think it's only going to work completely in that particular land. You know why? And I believe this to be true. Because if this ever happens, it's going to happen because there's going to be a lot of people that are passionate about doing Avram's project. And those are going to be us and our family and our cousins. And 1 second. And they're probably going to do it. Their natural place to do it is where Avram started and where they belong. So this is all natural, and this all can be explained. I don't want to go into the Pratim. I want to give you a little bit of a sense of the Pratim, just to tell you this is what to think about. And this is an amazing thing to spend your life thinking about as a practical matter. I'm not talking Torah, I'm not talking religion. I'm talking about practical plan. That's what I'm saying. I'm not talking about anything supernatural. Are we supposed to look at this and say, look, here's something cool, here's why, it's the most important thing, and I think it's only going to work over there, and that's why it's interesting to me.
I know this might be a sort of cheap question, but if Avram Avinu understood this, I'm sure other people understood this, this goal, this mission,
Right.
why isn't it such a popular concept? Why wasn't this passed down?
I told you you can ask that question. You said you're here tonight. No, it's a very interesting question. You're saying why isn't this? If this is really the core? Why?
I wonder why the truth.
No. Yeah, because I don't understand. What's the question? You're saying if this is so core.
It's a sort of cheap question. I'm just asking.
Yeah, it's cheap.
No,
I'll tell you why it's
your
cheap.
opinion.
Right. No. Oh, my opinion.
But why this is not so popular?
No, my opinion is that.
Why are most people like removed from the truth? Like in general, whatever. Like it's always
Could be the answer. I mean,
that's the question.
I have a theory.
I think the
why are
question
they
is a little
closer to
higher
you?
resolution in the sense that if the Jewish project had this as its central aim, and this is kind of, I guess, built into, or at least, like you can understand the machine before you build it, right? You can also understand it afterwards by seeing its parts and understanding its. Right, I can watch the machine do its thing, and then I see, okay, that gear turns against that gear, and that turns. I don't know if is there an obvious way to look at, let's say, Judaism as it exists today with halachas, which are difficult because halachas are contingent on certain A methods that we use after all the opinions and B the opinions that are had, right? So is there, maybe part of the difficulty is that we have a halacha that you can't look at and determine an actual goal that the halacha is aiming at, right? It's very
Halacha is one aspect of Judaism. People try to find way too much in halacha.
Well, I don't mean even halacha in the legal sense. Halacha is a minhagim, let's say, or and mikra.
Say there are people
anything.
Okay, look, are people sort of missing the focus? Yes, that's definitely what I'm saying. If I come to you and saying this is the essence of Judaism, and no one knew that. Okay. Yeah, what can I say?
So maybe we made a mistake. Halacha is emphasized as, well, let's say, the Torah definitely, the Tanakh is much more concerned with Eretz Yisrael than the Gemara is.
Correct. Look, that's the thing. The point is, I think we mentioned this last time, that I do believe that this idea got forgotten because when ideas are not practical, they tend to be forgotten. You can't keep an idea alive that's not practical.
Is there Judaism that can be realized as the sum of its parts? Meaning, can I look at, let's say, Agada Halacha?
We're part of it.
Right, but I'm saying is, I'm just trying to maybe understand if this idea is as central as you're saying it is, and the Torah definitely reading Mikra K'pshuta definitely seems to lead there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just a hypothesis to answer Yaakov's question would be that there are Yadis in general is a difficult thing to organize now, and even to understand the ways that the different parts kind of speak to each other or don't. It's very difficult to learn halacha, let's say, for example, which people today see as a very central aspect of Yiddishkeit.
It is very central. I'm not questioning that. But yeah, continue.
But you can't deduce any Eretz Yisrael features from, let's say, looking at the schematics of it, or you can. Interesting question.
It's an interesting question. Yeah, I'm not sure how you could deduce it from halacha.
If the map, I mean, if halacha was a map that said Israel in the middle of it, it's a little easier.
That's enough. It couldn't. There's a Shavuos. They would have killed us. What do you mean? We had to go into hiding. That's another thing. We had the whole little idea.
So that might be the answer.
The whole Judaism has been in hiding for a long time.
But I think at least the way most people conceptualize Yadis today, it doesn't say Eretz Yisrael on the cover.
Listen.
I was going to say the controversial thing you're saying is that the Zionists are right. The main thing is to be Eretz Yisrael.
So the first thing is that's a controversial thing that you're saying. I didn't say. That's what I repudiate any.
No.
Okay. The kids are. In a certain sense, yes. Yes, I am saying that. Look, yes, I am saying that Eretz Yisrael is sent to the whole Torah. What should I tell you? You know what? The problem is like this. The problem is everyone wants to get...
My Zayt was a big Zionist.
Yeah.
It's okay.
So is my Zayt, maybe, whatever. But the is like this. No, there's nothing wrong with that. Zionism is the center of the Torah. No question about that. Now, what the word Zionism, what the word Zionism mean? If you identify Zionism with Herzl, they say, that Zionism as identified by Herzl is not central to the Torah. No, Herzl did not think about Iraq. I don't think he thought about Iraq. He thought about political stuff, which is all very nice. It's good, but it's not central to the Torah that Jews should be safe. It's not. It's so interesting to Hashem that Jews should be safe, only as a means. Whatever, as much as he cares about the whoever's being safe. Like Ibnei Kushi and Matam Li, only as having a special role in the world is Zionism central to the Torah, only as a Iraq. So yeah, in that sense, it's central. But here's the thing: I can't. You see, everyone wants to be very conservative about the Judaism and be redeemed. He said, I can't have both. I can't help you. Redeem Gula is the ultimate revolution. And I'm a very conservative person myself. I don't like having these kinds of radicals. I hate it. So as I told before, but I'm also have this ability to have ideas that are not comfortable, but eventually become comfortable. But the way I say, yes, it's radical. Gula is radical, but it also means, as I said before, it means that to think about this that I think it's a very interesting thing to think about Yiddishkeit as a project, as an attempt that we're still working on. We're working on something. We're trying to get something. Gula is not just an extra thing.
Does this question parallel?
So 1 second. So just in terms of halacha, you can ask me, well, where does everything fit into this? Where does halacha fit? It's a good question. I'm not going to talk about that tonight because we can't talk about everything tonight. There's so much to talk about. How do you see as Hashem does? What are the means to do this? Does the Torah prescribe certain ways? Why does it have to do that? It's Canaan. Where does halacha fit into this? Where does everything else fit into this? I encourage everyone to read my sefer if you haven't done so, especially Chelik Zayin. I talk about this. But even other halakha, Chelik Zayin, I talk about Areka. And yeah, this is called Torah Kula. It's important to me. Nothing I can't help you.
Does this question parallel the question of basically is schar mitzvah? Is the schar mitzvah outside of the mitzvah, or is it the mitzvah itself? Like
which question? The question of Hashgacha?
The original question you started with. Yeah. It seems to parallel very well with the question of is the schar mitzvah that when you do the mitzvah you get good results, or is it just something outside of it and it's basically you're doing something and the result that you're trying to get is completely disconnected from what you're doing.
It could be. It could be.
Was passive to you.
Yeah, it could be, but here's the thing.
I think it's a schar for the mitzvah minhag or
Huh?
It's schar mitzvah minhag or halacha. I mean, does it work as a function of what it is?
Right.
I mean, that's a slightly different.
I'm not sure why we know the schar mitzvah mitzvah is the easiest way to say this.
No, but here's the thing. Right. Okay, fine. But here's the thing. And this has to do with the point that Shmuley was raising.
The song doesn't, I think,
that
vouch for that.
That now we're talking about Kol Torah Kula. So what holds about a prat, especially given that the prat is maybe halacha, doesn't necessarily hold for the whole project.
True, but it's gonna probably would assume that different pratim somehow feed into this class.
I'm not sure because here's a model. Hashem has his plan and it works through everyone, right? And then we need to incentivize everyone on the way.
Right.
So we give them schar. So then the schar has a completely different function. It's to incentivize people, and then they're supposed to plug into the plan. What? Because you really supposed to serve Hashem Shalom Rasakal.
In as much as the plan works, then it would be a schar too, right? Because people do want this.
But that's not schar mitzvah. No, the plan. That's not really what schar mitzvah is about. I'm saying mitzvah. No, because if I'm talking about the totality of the plan, and a mitzvah is an aspect that contributes to the plan, then we don't have to assume that the rules that hold on the mitzvah and its reward apply to the whole plan.
But if you agree to that question, it does parallel because you would say once you're getting the general system works this way.
Yeah.
We say pratim also could work that way.
They may or may not. I'm just pushing back. I'm just pushing back. Yeah, I'm just pushing back that I'm hesitant to look, I'm just hesitant to generalize beyond what I'm certain of. I'm certain of a question. So for that, right? Okay, so this is the question. So should we as good Jews, should we be thinking about how do we do this? And whether it's possible to do this, should we be thinking practically? Should we be meeting and saying, look, here's this vision. It's a really awesome vision. What does it take to get people to think like that? I think that's an awesome life's work, by the way. I have no problem with that as life's work.
It's a little bit hard to be, let's say, arch-pragmatic about it, right? Because
why?
You kind of need a reason to be pragmatic, which...
What do you mean, to be pragmatic about a record? No, the reason would be because, look, this is a redemptive idea. So tell me why we shouldn't do this. Either you'll tell me why because it's pie in the sky, it's not going to work. Fine, but if it could work, why don't we do this?
I'm suspicious. I mean, to me, it's at least maybe I don't understand it and it's not compelling to me, but if I don't understand what it is, if I don't understand what redemption is.
No. I'm just redemption is if we could see things as God does. What about that? What if we
I
could
mean,
learn
but
to see
these
as
are
God
kind
does?
of words that don't. These are words that can correspond to a lot of different things.
I don't think so. I don't.
They're not.
Agree
They're
with
not your
that. I don't agree with that. Why can't they go
medium-sized dry goods words, right?
What's that?
Meaning it's not regular words that you're, it's see the world as God does. I think each of those words can, prompt new questions.
I agree with you. There's a lot of work to do over here. But no, I agree with you.
I just don't understand to me what's compelling about the statement of you'll see the world as God does.
What's compelling? I hear that point. I'm masking to that point, and that's not
Unless
the
God
about.
means something specific and seeing the
Say
world
that.
means something specific.
I agree with you. One second. So let me address Shmuel's question and tell me if this answers your point. Tonight's share is not to explain how this is going to work or how it could work. Tonight's share is saying like this: assuming that this is what the Torah wants from us, and assuming that we are working with the Torah, then our work would be to answer all the questions that you're asking. You understand? So I'm not saying it's compelling on its own. I'm saying, but look, assuming this is what Torah is about, read my sefer, whatever. Maybe you're convinced that this is what's central to the whole Torah, and assuming you for some reason or another are working with the Torah, then your work should be on side number one that we're supposed to understand things, to understand this and ask all those questions. What does seeing mean? What is God?
You're supposed to at least understand it. You don't understand it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Right.
That's an understanding of sorts. Also,
Yes.
I don't understand if you have to understand one thing, why we would choose to understand or not understanding versus understanding the thing itself.
What?
if the point is to not understand,
why would that be the point?
Well, not the point. If Geula could be achieved without understanding, right?
Okay.
Second side, it's not a load-bearing portion of the Geula process.
Right. Okay.
You can achieve it without
it.
But then, at least to me, it's kind of like you're still saying that there are things that need to be understood. You have to understand that there is something that's called Geula that exists in the world.
Right.
That it can happen.
Right.
Saying, to me, it's not necessarily.
That's my second side. That is exactly my second side. That maybe we don't have to.
Anymore.
No, the first side is look. There's this idea called direct.
If you don't, then you can't participate, right? I mean,
if you don't do what?
There's a minimum criteria of understanding for participation. If Geula is something we participate in, even passively.
Right.
Let's say I recognize it's.
Yeah, but then the minimum criteria is something very different. It's maybe look, Eretz Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Torah mitzvahs, and just go with the flow. That might be the minimum criteria. The criteria could be anything.
That also takes a certain level of understanding.
Sure, it does, but
I just don't understand what's if Geula is something that, let's say, doesn't require human participation at all. This is something that just happens, whether you like it or not. You'll be, you'll find yourself on an eagle one morning and you wonder how you got there.
Right.
That doesn't require any human understanding. It doesn't require any human participation. It just happens.
Right.
Then there's, I think, Kitzvah Achron is saying that we have to understand everything.
Right.
Or we have to at least we have to understand not only what it is, but also how it is.
Right.
And
do it. And
actually.
Because we're going to do it. That's
right.
Mm-hmm.
Participate in the mechanics and go through it. The middle, I don't understand. To me, it kind of seems to suffer from the downsides of both of those approaches.
Okay, so we didn't talk about the middle yet, but the middle is where most from in operate, I think. By the way,
right?
Yes.
And
so that's what I want to. No. So I want to talk about that. Right? I didn't explain. That's what I'm keeping on calling hashgacha and patterns. So that's what I'm trying to use patterns as meaning something.
Even patterns as minigs or patterns as halachas.
So let's get to patterns. Let's get to that. Okay, let's get to that.
Maybe you said everything is minig.
Look. Right. At this point, we're talking with the extreme, which is understanding. Okay. Now, understanding means, like I said, I didn't explain it to you now. You don't understand it. No one understands it fully. There's a lot to understand about it. But I'm saying the Torah wants this from us. This is what Torah is about. So it means my job is first to understand this, assuming I'm supposed to understand everything. First to understand this, and then explain it, and then implement it, and then figure out why not. So we should start doing it in Chutz La'aretz. Of course we should. This is an amazing thing to dedicate your life to, and everyone should start doing it as soon as they can. Fine, great. And or maybe it's going to work more in Eretz Yisrael. That, as I said before, that's where Avraham Avinu did it. That's what we can do. And these are the things to think about, practical, logical things. The impetus to think about them is not because you understand them now. The impetus is because you want to learn Torah. There's a reason why we read Torah. There's a reason why we learn Torah. That's part of what we were talking about before. Everyone wants to know where does this fit into the Torah. Where does it fit into halacha? I think there's a reason why Talmud Torah connected kulam. So everyone wants to know halacha, yeah? Where does this fit into halacha? Tell me where it fits into halacha. Talmud Torah connected kulam. I only know this because I do Talmud Torah. So that's where it fits into halacha. Talmud Torah connected kulam. It essentially tells us that in the structure of halacha, Everything you learn from the Torah is connected kulam. So you wonder where this fits into, so it doesn't. It doesn't say on the Shulchan Aruch that Eretz Yisrael is the center. Yes, it does, because that's Talmud Torah connected kulam, and Talmud Torah will eventually lead you to this message. So I have no problem with that. So Talmud Torah connected kulam, and Talmud Torah says this is the central thing. And assuming my first side, Talmud Torah says only do what you understand. So then that's my job. My job in life is to understand this, and once I understand it, I'll start facing Eretz Yisrael in earnest, and I won't be a hypocrite, and I want to go to Eretz Yisrael, and I'll tell you why I want to go to Eretz Yisrael, and that's how it's going to happen. That's side number one. Okay. Good. Side number two. And side number two is we're calling this hashkacha. So let's talk about this in one way.
I just want to point out that people, I think, in the first side assume that it makes it like not impressive. I think it's much more impressive.
It's actually much more impressive.
Much more impressive.
It's very, very impressive. It actually becomes really impressive.
So
That's
you
what I
think it's
mentioned.
literally, you think a lot of them, certain of us, very literally, that all of Klal Yisrael will do this. That's like, really? Like,
Yeah, it's the most impressive thing, of course.
Yeah.
First of all, it means
People think like egos flying in there is like, that's
it's
nothing.
nothing. Exactly. I mean, that's man in Takam Tzal Malakim. You have these Gemara. This is the Gemara Babasa about more of that Tzadikim Machemesa. The Gemara Babasa that sees Tzadikim Shei Karah Shmashal Kadosh Baruch. Tzadikim are going to become like God. This is a big deal. This is really a big deal if we can actually do this. Now, it opens up many more questions than it answers, of course. But this is really becomes very compelling. Side number two. Side number two is like this. Side number two is that forget about fancy things about the role of Jewish people. Let's say I tell you the following. Let's say I tell you the Maisa, based on patterns of history, we believe that if we go to Eretz Yisrael, we're going to have more hashkacha. Okay? And this is, by the way, a statement that most people would say, yeah, that exists, that idea in the Torah, that Klal Yisrael has special hashkacha in Eretz Yisrael, specifically the Ramban, which is what I'm going to talk about in the next year. The Ramban says that Eretz Yisrael is the land that HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself manages, controls, as opposed to the other lands, which are the Sorim, which go through the song. Okay, I'm going to speak about that, I think, in the next year. So let's say a person says, look, that's a pattern. That's not because of what we do. That's the way Hashem set up His world. You learn the Ramban. So you learn the Ramban. In the Sha'ar we talk about this. There's a certain spatial structure in the world. Eretz Yisrael is in the center of the world. Hashem corresponds, metaphorically, of course, in the center of the Yeshiva Shemala, surrounded by the Yeshiva Shemala, whatever it's called, the Bezin Shemala, like the Navi says. What? Aravis. Hashem Yoshev Akisei Rabbanisa, and Tzva Shemayim Hamdim Yemino Yibusmayla. Yemino 35 Sarim of Chesed, and Bismillah is 35 Sarim of Din, 70 Umis, are divided into 35 and 35, Rachman is Chesed and Din, Kosh Baruch Hu is Be'emtza, and Yisrael is in the Emtza of all the Umis, and Yerushalayim is Yisrael is the center of the whole world. So it's right. Center, spatially, Mamish literally in the center. I has literally in the center, Yisrael is in the center of the world. And meaning like this, meaning since there's some sort of something happening through history, the revelation of Hashem through history, and since Hashem is, metaphorically speaking, the center of the gods, because they're the center of the Malachim, there's Malachim on either side, therefore the land that's in the center of the world is the most befitting for Him to be revealed in. Okay, by the way, what's the mean that Yisrael is in the center? Someone once, famously, all the continents were once one continent by the name of Pangaea. And if you look at Pangaea, Bidyuk, not Pangaea, whatever. Pangaea. Okay, shine.
It's been a while.
Yes, it was never there. If you look over there in Pangaea, Bidyuk Eretz Yisrael is in the center. So good. So Eretz Yisrael is the center of the world, literally, and since Hashem is the center, whatever you want to call it. So therefore, in that land, this is where He's going to be Mizgala. And Klal Yisrael is going to be Mizgala, they're the center. That's what it means. This is how it goes. That's, a pattern. There's a pattern in reality that's not based on thought, not based on explanation, like by doing this, something that happens. There's something that we know, we see, that Hashem chose to do something, to reveal Himself, to reveal His midas through His actions, interactions to the world. Specifically with this nation, that's something we all believe in. that we were chosen for Hashem to work through us, something like that, and specifically through this land. Now, again, you want to get into deeper metaphysical questions such as did Hashem choose us or did we choose Him? It might not be related to this question because let's say Avram Avinu discovered God. Okay, fine. Avram Avinu chose Hashem. The Seder. Shmuel said something to me, right? When Avram chose Hashem, fine. Avram chose Hashem, but now what? Now there's hashgacha on Avram. Now that Avram Avinu chose Hashem, there's hashgacha on Avram b'zarei. Not every yid who's a zera Avram chose Hashem, and yet it seems in history that every yid somehow is part of this project. Let's say I'm going to say you can dig up. What?
It does.
One second. So every yid is part of this project, like it or not, because Avram discovered Hashem. But now, not halacha l'maisa for every yid is not that he has to think about it. He has to look. Because one time my elder Zayda Avram Avinu found Hashem. Now Hashem decided that He's going to do things through him and through the land of Canaan and through everything. And now I'm part of that, like it or not. And Taka, some Yidden don't like it, and they try to get away from it. And Yechezkel talks about that already. You want to be like the Goyim. And the Sefer Kedas Yitzchak talks about it. What's Mechayiv every Yid? Who told me? Why do I have to be part of this project? It's a good kasha. But the fact is, once Avram Avinu did it, his children are part of the project. Like, for some reason or not. Say something?
I mean, to me though, there is, let's say, Rambam is definitely looking for alternatives to understanding the centrality of Eretz Yisrael while recognizing it. I guess sees it as having said that the Nevi'im, again, maybe the lesson that you mentioned, and I did look it up, and it is quite interesting that it's there
Maybe what?
in Hilchos Zara. But I'm saying this idea that Avram, let's say, is the one who recognizes God, and God, in some sense, stays a little bit more passive than, let's say, Ramban's scheme of God, let's say, playing a more active role. Eretz Yisrael is kind of is much more. It becomes increasingly contingent, right? Meaning it's only important because what's achievable outside of Eretz Yisrael is more achievable inside of Eretz Yisrael. But
You saying Mishnas Rambam? Mishnas Rambam you're talking about? Talking about Mishnas Rambam, the Torah Rambam? What are you saying? What do you mean it's more achievable than this?
No, I'm saying just conceptually, right? If I can.
No, but I'm talking about the Hashgacha. The Rambam says the Hashgacha Avram B'zar. The Rambam says in the Meir. The Hashgacha that's Malav Avram B'zar. It says the guest is amazing. I mean, it's psukim, but the Rambam says the Hashgacha on Avram and Klal Yisrael throughout the Torah. That's it. That does a lot. You understand? That could do the Kusri. The whole Kusri. Right? You could fold the whole Kusri and put it into that sentence of the Rambam. That the Hashgacha on Avram B'zar takes certain patterns and has certain mahalchim.
But for the Kusri, it's Tzidai, not Tzidai.
So that's the thing. We get to metaphysical questions, but I'm not even talking about them. That I don't care about. I'm talking about the Lamaisnika questions. The Lamaisnika questions, even the Rambam's masking the Hashgacha on Avram B'zar. Hashgacha on Avram B'zar happens to the town that Avram Avinu lived in, which happens to be called Jerusalem. Kacha. It's his town. It's Abraham's town, and Hashem is busy with Avram because that's how Hashgacha works. You see?
No, but I'm saying if it's Tzidai, we have to look at Eretz Yisrael and see if it's still properly meets the criteria.
Yes, that's true. Good. Yes, 100%. Now, I'm making a certain assumption.
Maybe we
right.
have to
excellent.
Get Tel Aviv off the map.
This Chas V'Shalom. I hate when people say.
I'm only saying a few provocations.
It's terrible. It's terrible. We should fix Tel Aviv. Shouldn't say lashon hara.
No,
I know you weren't. I'm just saying. I'm not making a machal.
I agree with you, machal.
But okay, good. The mice like this. No, of course we have to talk about this. Then we're going to get to the next room. If it's taka hashgacha, so do we know is it like today? What makes us so special today? Right.
So
right.
Maybe now
Thomas
we find a place that better fits the criteria.
100%. That's what I mentioned in the first year. If you're Thomas Chosavis, if you're Thomas Chosavis, you're going to Shabbos stuff from here. Chosavis is over, so maybe it doesn't matter. This is what I'm open to any result. Any answer. Okay, good.
That's a question. According to the Ramban, is it also going to play out? I think this is how I would imagine he would learn us the pasuk of wolves living with sheep, very literally, because then the result will also be somewhat passive in the sense that it doesn't really make sense. It's like I don't really care if a sheep gets killed by a wolf, and that's another result that will happen. Like part of the result is things that I don't either care about because it is not necessarily coming from me.
Or maybe
the result should be
care
by its nature.
Yeah, I think you should care, but okay, right. Okay,
whatever.
It's interesting. You saying that?
Wow.
That's interesting.
No, I'm saying the way we're seeing his option. Yeah, it's like part of patterns.
And
for some reason,
cares
it's good.
about wolves.
Yeah, it's good. It's good for
Hashem
this.
cares about sheep. He doesn't care about sheep, but Hashem does. But see, then you'd be over the laraka, right? Hashem cares about the sheep, the one of you.
No, and I don't care. I don't not care. I don't care about if a wolf's nature is to kill sheep. Maybe I care about my sheep. I'll try to make them kill. But the nature of a wolf doesn't bother me.
It's very interesting. Very interesting. Right? You're saying the Havtach is not being supernatural. It might not be such a bridge from supernatural, but it might be about saying that we're the ones who make good things happen.
Yeah, whatever. If you don't say that, you're going to have like results that also you don't like. It's like disconnected from it. It's not really you.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to try to wrap this up a little. Let's say 10, 15 more minutes. I think we'll be done. I think. So I just want to just give this a little space. This second mahal over here. Hashem is mashgiach on Avram Bazari. That's what Kulam Amodim. Psukim and Yehuda Vayit and it's also before Sharam. Okay. So Hashem is mashgiach on Avram Bazari. Say that. That means Hashem worries about it. Take the other extreme now. That Hashem worries about it means I don't have to worry about it. Which again, of course, taking extreme positions over here, you could say that the truth is somewhere in between, or maybe they're two sides of the same coin. I'm not sure about this. I want to just lay out the two stuff here. I have to think about it a lot. So there's something called Hashgacha. Hashem is mashgiach on Avram Bazari. He's mashgiach on them in Eretz Yisrael. Why? Because that's Avram's land, because it's the center of the world in the Book of Bones, Mahalach, and the Ramban's Mahalach. Okay, so then I'll tell you like this. Go to Eretz Yisrael and you get more Hashgacha. Yeah, and Taka people say this, people say it's true. Okay, so now let's think about that. Let's say that's true. Let's say I believe that I understand Jewish history, I understand God in Jewish history, and therefore it's interesting to me. This is my destiny. This is the destiny of me as a Jew, of the Jewish people, let's say community, to be in this land and to interact with the Kodesh Baruch Hu in that land, through that land. Okay. So then I should go there. That should draw me. That should pull me. Now let's just talk about that. Why should that pull me? Why should that pull me? Because I'm going to have a better life. I'm going to be richer. I'm going to be happier. Maybe not. I don't know. I'll have more hashgacha. Okay. So what? So why is that a mechayim? What if I have more hashgacha? So I think, and this sort of ties into the second side, that in a certain sense, this is what religion's about. We have not two stuff what religion's about in one share. But in a certain sense, at least practically, the idea of being a yid, or the idea of religion, is that there's something that you're part of. There's something important that God is doing that you are a part of. We call that serving Hashem. It's serving Hashem. How do you serve Hashem? Well, if Hashem is doing something through your people in a certain way, and you could either be a big part of that or be a small part of that or no part of that at all, then that is the most important avodas Hashem, the most important reality, most important truth. If truth speaks to it, reality speaks to it, and there's this reality that Hashem is doing something through you, your people, in a certain place, and you're like, no thanks, it's basically a curse. It's akin to curse. It's like a person saying, I don't want to be a Ben Mahava. Why? Because I enjoy it better to not be a Ben Mahava. Okay, it doesn't really make it on a deep level, he's missing something fundamental. Similarly, if you see Hashgachas in Eretz Yisrael, Am Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael, and you say the Michael because Tovli over here, then you're so very, very deep kofer, I think. I read recently, there's a fellow who I've been fascinated by, his name is Karl Popper, and he said the following. He's the biggest kofer of the day. But he said the following thing. He also is a genius otzim, and he has a lot to learn from him and think about. And how to apply it and how to respond. He said the following. He said, the future depends on ourselves, and we do not depend on any historical necessity. We do not depend on any historical necessity. He's very against what he calls historicism, this idea of reading history, which comes from Hegel, really comes from Chazal. That means for the Nevi'im, Hegel himself starts with, Hegel talks, if you ever read his book, if you read the beginning of his book about history, he talks much like a Navi. We have to understand Hashem's reason, and it's nifli. You don't hear people talking like that.
He calls it theology.
Yeah. He talks about Providence, a capital P, and basically there was this idea of we can look at history, we have to see the reason of history. It says we have to see the Yad Hashem, we have to see what Hashem is doing through history, what history is being megal. And along came Kaifim Gedolim and said, this is the worst thing to do, and you think you're prophets, and you think you understand what's happening, and no one understands anything, and the future depends on ourselves, and we do not depend on any historical necessity. It means let's take achrayas, sort of my first step. Let's take achrayas, that's what I said, there's a lot to learn from it. Let's take achrayas, and let's stop thinking that history is going to happen by itself. That's I once tainted, you may have seen this, the Mashiach is going to come, this is going with my first side, Mashiach is going to come because people are going to doubt that he's going to come. So he says, as long as people are certain that Mashiach is coming, no one's going to do anything about it. So that's exactly what Papa says, we do not depend on any historical necessity. I mean, there's no mechayev in history that anything should happen. And that's the biggest kfira. And in a certain sense, it's the only kfir. Only
Maybe
kfir.
it's
Why?
the
Because the essence of Yiddishkeit is the Eibush is doing something. What? When? I don't know. But Hashem is doing something, and Hashem is in control. And we have a part in that. Right? That's essential. No, I'm not saying like this. Ram has 13 acres. Why are we talking about 12? One second. The Ram is talking. I'm not talking. Why am I making 12 acres such an important thing? The first acre is Mitzvah Hashem. But I'm saying because like this, if you look at the Torah, more than the Torah cares about Mitzvah Hashem, the Torah cares about that there's something happening. There's a story. There's a middle, a beginning, and there's going to be an end. And if you don't believe that there's some story happening in the world, then you're missing the whole Torah. Then you're missing the whole Torah. Mitzvah Hashem, nobody even knows. Shmuley says, what's Hashem? I don't know. Who knows what Hashem is? It's very hard to define. You have to be a big chacham to define it. But that there's some story happening, that's like, yeah, we go every week. We go to shul, we read another bad part of the story. So, of course. So, if you deny that there's a divine story happening, if you deny historical necessity, you're the biggest guy for Hashem. Okay? And if you do understand historical necessity, there's some story happening in the history, and here's the story is Pachas Yosef, here's the contours, and Klal Yisrael is a major part, which, by the way, a lot of intelligent people are minded to this, Jewish or not. But clearly the Jewish people are part of, somehow, integral, fundamental to the story of the world. And then, and Eretz Yisrael is then too. So then, you might say, well, you should be part of this story. Why? Because the story has a historical necessity. I mean, the story is mechayiv you to be a part of it. It's Moshe. If you're a person who cares about reality, cares about what's important in the world, then the story is important.
Just to ask about that last point. Let's say a person is I think there's a bigger kaifid than the one that you mentioned.
Which one?
Meaning, we're saying is that if a person, let's say, denies that there's any providential work that can be done in the world, or that history
that is being done.
That is being done.
Or that has been done.
Well, or
that will be
here's
done.
my question: what about if a person believes in a providence that can be done?
That can
be done.
Can be done.
History can be actualized, and it can also
Right.
be actualized.
Right. That's what I think. That's sort of my first side. Right.
So then this is not saying.
No. See, I think we're part of the historical necessity. I think the fact that people are going to doubt whether this history has any historical necessity is also part of Hashem's plan.
You put in the Geiger counter in the box.
I think so.
Okay.
See? That's why I think there's a lot to learn from this fellow. And that's why I still maintain that Mashiach is going to come by people who don't believe, who doubt it. That's my first side. My first side is we have to understand it. And if we don't understand it, it won't happen. That's what it means. Again, it's a Gemara in Sanhedrin about whether Gula is telling tshuva or not. Maybe a very important sushta. I have a feeling it's not, but it might be my same question. Okay, so this is the big question. So, is it that should we go and do things because of history, because of patterns? Or are we supposed to understand things? Are we supposed to understand things? I don't know. It's like a shayla mitzvah kavana, sort of. Again, bad zustand, right? No, but I'm saying the idea is a mitzvah something that you do because you're fitting into something larger than your mind. Forget about your mind. Don't be so self-centered. It's very important. It's a very important idea, by the way. In general, people are too self-centered about the Yiddishkeit. And you have to understand, what I mean to say is like this. Marshall, just to give you a bad example, but it happens to be a decent example that, this Tisha B'Av, people say, people wish each other a Tisha B'Av a meaningful fast. For meaningful fast. What's pshat? What if this is not a meaningful fast? Because I'm going to fast and it's not going to be meaningful? Why should I fast if it's not meaningful? But this is a stupid thing, because you know what the purpose of Tisha B'Av is? That the fact that Klal Yisrael as a whole is fasting, that has a meaning over and beyond any one person saying less Lashon Hara because he heard a good service on Tisha B'Av, right? But there's a focus, there's a self-centeredness that people have, which is like, what was the mitzvah doing for me? So of course, and this is why you have to be careful to take any of these stuff too extreme, and keep on saying we're charting at the extremes over here. But even on my first side, that everything is about understanding, it's you could still say, well, you know what? People should mindlessly go to Eretz Yisrael, as many people do. Mindlessly because they're inspired, because look, it's so important to the Torah, because I don't want to be facing it, I just want to be a hypocrite. Because that way they're going to aid yet a guy who's going to explain it one day. Or like someone should fast on Tisha B'Av, because that way someone will remember, one day someone will explain why it's so important. I guy's going to fast on Tisha B'Av, they have no idea why it's important. It's going to mean nothing to him, but he should still do it. Why? Do you believe in a meaningless Judaism? No. But I believe that we need the masses, and I don't mean masses in a derogatory sense. We need to keep things alive and do practices that will eventually unlock meaning. Okay, so that's why don't take these things too extreme. Even on my tzad that the gula and it all depends on understanding. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's certainly by design. Let's say that Chazal are ma'or about it, so Torah is ma'or about it, so and people get excited about it. So, but that's not the ultimate story. The ultimate story, according to the first tzad, is totally an intellect. Dilma, the ultimate story is totally in hashkacha. It's totally in bigmay shechas, to follow the patterns of hashkacha, to plug ourselves into the patterns of hashkacha, which seem to be very apparent, and go with it. It's very powerful. And these are, I think, two different studim. Maybe they're two sides of the same coin. I want to think about this a lot. I will do another think about it, and then I'll let you know if I have any more to say about this. But yeah, these are the two studim, and like this. So that's it for this question. What I want to do is for the next question, I want to think like this, and this will get back to what we started with. Either way, whether the future is going to happen through thought, let's say, or whether it's going to happen through hashkacha, we need to talk about what we started with the first year, which is the relationship of the future to the past, and whether the models are the same, because either that's negate for us to understand what to do, or that's negate us to understand the patterns, right? Either way, whether Gula is us doing what Avram Avinu did, let's say, or Gula is being thinking, or Gula is us fitting into the pattern, we still have to work out these questions of the world is different than it used to be. Either because we want to figure out, let's say, why should we do this in Eretz Yisrael? Is it important to do in Eretz Yisrael? Or either mitzad the thinking, or mitzad the hashkacha. We'll have to plug these two together.
Why do you need history better than history?
What?
Why do you need history better than
So I'll tell you specifically what I want to talk about.
why can't you just see the Torah there?
Okay, no, so specifically what I want to talk about is next year I want to talk about this. This is what I'll talk about next time, I think. The Ramban says, as we mentioned before, that Eretz Yisrael is controlled by Hashem and the rest of the lands are controlled by the 70 sons. So I want to explain to you next year what that means. And I want to talk about whether that's still true. It's still not on Hazeh. Still not on Hazeh. So you understand why that's important? If the difference in Eretz Yisrael and Sha'aratz is Legabe Hashkacha, the Ramban tells us what the difference is. The other Haratz Seth Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael has Hashem. So if we can understand what that means, let's see if that's still Legabe on Hazeh. I have reason to think it's not. As I mentioned briefly the first year. I don't think there are Lehem Achem anymore. I think the world is all Mavobel, some Chayers and Vavel Umis, whatever. Other things happen. And I don't know if there's any Amim have their unique character and the Sarim and so on and so forth. So maybe, as I mentioned also the first year, maybe we're getting to the point of Asida. I'm saying we can't mindlessly apply the Torah. By the way, and just to be clear, if you mindlessly apply the Torah, it's probably going to have good effects. You have to understand. I'm not saying the guys who are going to Eretz Yisrael are keeping Eretz Yisrael. The concept of Eretz Yisrael, they're keeping it on the sense of the scene. We have to think very much. Those people are going to stay in the Chutz La'aretz because they're saying, look, I see that Yisrael Spash Chalom Kulai. You're right? And what's going to happen? She has to come. And it's going to Spash Chalom Kulai. And they're going to say, see, told you so. Right? But Lamaisa, they have to be thankful for the people that didn't listen to them and made Eretz Yisrael the place that's going to be Spash. What? Yeah. I'm saying, so this is not... don't take anything too stark. We have to lay it out the two stadim. And I want to talk about what should talk to us. They keep on saying the same point. If you read a Gemara that says you go to Eretz Yisrael, you're not going to have this, and that Gemara talks to you, that's great. That's what it's supposed to do. It's by design. It's supposed to talk to you. Go to Eretz Yisrael. In all my stadim, that's true. Even if Eretz Yisrael is only an idea today, because the mice of the Sarim are not there anymore, fine. But how do you keep that idea alive? Is because the people live there. But I'm talking about in the most perfect gula. I'm looking for the most perfect gula. I want to know what does that look like, because I have to not be inspired to go there. That's what we said the first year. I have to not be inspired to go. So I want to work out. Is there a better prize than it's so Maradik. I feel so good. Which so I do not mean to minimize. Again, anytime I say something that may be chashuv l'gerei, so I've been missing a duh. I don't mean to it. No, you understand what I'm saying? All these things are wonderful. But I'm talking about what's the tzura of the shleimus of it. So the tzura of shleimus of it, so totally in the havana, or the tzura of shleimus of it, so totally in hashkacha. And this I leave with the suffix because I have to think about it more, and it's not.
My only, I guess, question is,